Obviously, a lot of news in the California gubernatorial race, especially with the allegations against Eric Swallwell. He made an announcement a couple of days ago that he has decided to stay in this race and fight the allegations. So first and foremost, can I have your reaction to the fact that he is not stepping aside, that he's going to continue to run for governor?
Look, I have called for him to leave the race and to step down from Congress. The allegations are incredibly serious. As we know, the Manhattan District Attorney is opening an investigation tomorrow into his behavior. And I think under all circumstances, that precludes him from running for governor. But let me step away from Eric Swallwell for a second and talk about the women in the case. Because what we've seen here is a situation where women were, in an extreme fashion, abused, disrespected, and then silenced. And so I want to say how outrageous it is that there's a system that supports this, that allows, where people are scared to come forward because they think that that will be incredibly bad for their careers. And I want to say that after all of the intense suffering that went on with regards to this behavior, Eric Swalwell's behavior, I applaud the women. I am so moved that they were brave and came forward and stood up and stood for what was right. And I think this is a story. There is a very seamy, extremely upsetting side to this story, but the flip side is trying to get a system that respects women fairly, allows them to speak, and redresses what appears to be extreme abuse.
So I want to pivot over to your gubernatorial campaign right now, especially in light of the fact that, you know, the predictive markets have shown your campaign surging in light of what's happening with Eric Swalwell. So in terms of the major issues that California is contending with, they are historically crime, homelessness, and I think more and more the demise of the entertainment industry. So can you speak about your priorities as governor, and to what extent are those issues going to be your top priorities? So
let me say this. My job running for governor is three things, Brian. It's to outwork every other candidate. I believe the person who gets elected governor will be the person who works the hardest. To go out and see Californians face to face. I've been doing town halls. I'm going to do a bus tour. I want to see and listen to as many Californians as possible, and to stick on the absolute bread and butter issues that are driving people's day-to-day lives. And you mentioned several of them, but I think I don't want to talk about the most important issues in this race without talking about affordability. And that's a fancy word. But what it basically means is things cost too much in California. And at the end of the month, people can't afford to live here. The majority of people can't make their budgets work at the end of the month. And that has to be the top priority for anyone who becomes the next governor.
So talk about those issues in particular, though. What is, we have heard governors, we've heard, I live in Los Angeles, we've heard mayors of Los Angeles say that they're going to get homelessness under control. I believe the unsheltered homeless population has decreased over the last several years, but the overall homeless population has still increased. And so what is your plan to tackle homelessness as it stands right now?
So my opinion about homelessness starts with the fact that nobody gets better on the street. Fall into that mental health problem because the stress of being on the street, the danger of being on the street, the vulnerability of being on the street puts immense pressure on their mental health. So my number one issue about homelessness is, one, keep people off the street. And if they're on the street, get them off the street as fast as possible, because being on the street in and of itself is a gigantic problem for them. So what does that mean from the standpoint of policy, and how do we address this? We have seen localities around California using emergency interim housing, not permanent housing, not a place where people are going to live forever, but emergency interim housing up to 2 years. And what does that look like? It really looks like a room with a key, shared dining facilities, laundry facilities. You can bring your dog. You don't have to be clean. It's safe. And there's mental health support. And getting people off the street is absolutely critical to getting people back into society. So the strategy up to now has been, we need permanent housing. That takes 7 years. It costs $750,000 a key. It obviously isn't working. And we've had a long time to see that it isn't working. And we need to move to something that's more compassionate, which actually moves much faster, which gets people off the street. And it's actually really important for the localities where this is happening too, Brian, because every community deserves to be safe. People love to be where they're walkable, where you don't have to be the Uber driver for your kids, and you don't have a super long commute to work. That's where we need to go. And in order to do that, we need to have urban environments and neighborhoods that people love to be in. Really important.
I mean, piggybacking off of that issue, and I have friends who are contractors and developers, and the number one issue is just the massive amount of time and hurdles it takes to actually build in California. I mean, there was the entire abundance discourse for Ezra Klein's book, and it's true. I mean, it is nearly impossible to build, certainly to build quickly in California. I mean, where I am in Los Angeles, it will take well over a year just for individual permits. And so, can you speak a little bit about the extent to which permitting reform, or just making building easier in California, or not allowing these environmental regulations that may have been well-intentioned in the beginning, but now just serve as more paperwork and red tape, how you're going to look toward reforming that system?
So, Brian, let me say this. I always say there's no silver bullet for affordable housing in California. It's silver buckshot, and it does start with permitting. And there was a California Environmental Quality Act reform last year, which I strongly supported publicly, to say we need to bring down permitting times. We need to get rid of duplicative permits. We need to bring down the cost of permitting. All true, and it's not over. We are obviously over-regulating in a way that is not coordinated and incredibly expensive. That's number one. Number two is zoning. We need to be zoned where people can live and where it works for us as a state. So zoning, there was a zoning reform last year, SB 79, Senate Bill 79, which I also publicly supported. That's zoning is two. Three is the ability to build a house. There are tens of thousands of permitted zoned units that aren't being built because they can't be built to a cost that people can afford.
Yeah.
What can we do about that? There is an answer. The answer is we need to do industrial construction of houses and apartment buildings offsite and constructed onsite.